The night Emeka showed up at Zara's restaurant with a gift-wrapped invitation. He was wearing a suit she'd never seen before. Charcoal gray, tailored, the kind that doesn't come off a rack. He'd gained weight in his jaw. Confidence does that to men who've stopped being afraid of you. He slid the envelope across the counter like he was doing her a favor. "I want you to be there," he said. "It's important to me that you see it." Zara looked at the envelope. She looked at him. Then she went back to wiping down the counter without saying a word, and Emeka stood there for a moment longer than was comfortable before he walked out the door. That was a Thursday in February. On Saturday, she was there. But let's go back, because that's not where the story starts. That's just where it gets good. Zara Mensah came to Toronto from Accra when she was 22, carrying a carry-on bag, $1,700 in a money belt under her jeans, and her mother's recipe book wrapped in a plastic bag at the very bottom of her luggage like something sacred. She'd memorized every page of it anyway. The smell of the ink, the handwriting that got smaller when her mother was tired. She could have recited those recipes in her sleep. She got a room in a house in Brampton with 4 other women, all of them West African, all of them building something quietly. She waitressed at a diner on Queen Street, double shifts on weekends, and on her days off she cooked. Jollof with the tomatoes reduced low and slow, Contamire stew that made her housemates knock on her bedroom door. Fried plantain so perfectly caramelized that Miss Osi from downstairs once stood in the kitchen doorway with her hand on her chest like she'd heard a song she'd forgotten. "You need to sell this," Mrs. Osi told her every single time. Zara just smiled and kept cooking. She met Emeka at a church picnic in Mississauga. He was tall, charming, easy with his words in the way some men are, the kind who make you feel chosen before you understand the cost. He sold insurance at the time. He had ambitions. He talked about them a lot, and Zara, who had learned to love quietly and work hard, found something attractive in a man who announced himself like that. Like he was sure of his own arrival. They married 2 years later, small ceremony, church hall. Her mother flew in from Accra and cooked for 3 days straight. There are photos from that wedding where Zara is laughing. Really laughing, head back. And you can tell she believed in it. You can tell she thought this was the beginning. She wasn't wrong. It was a beginning. Just not the one she'd imagined. The first few years, they were fine. Tight, but fine. Emeka's commissions were inconsistent. Zara waitressed and cooked and eventually started selling small trays of food on the side: jollof, kelewele, puff-puff for office events and church functions. Nothing formal, just word of mouth. Then they had Abina. And the year Abina was born, something shifted in Emeka. Not dramatically. Not in a way you could point to. It was gradual, the way he started talking about Zara's cooking, like it was a hobby, not a business. The way he stopped introducing her as his wife at work events and started just saying, "This is Zara." The way he looked at her across the kitchen some evenings with an expression she couldn't name, something between pity and distance. He got a promotion, senior account manager. Started wearing nicer suits. Started mentioning a colleague named Priya, first just in passing, then regularly, then constantly. Priya said this. Priya thinks that. Priya has a real career. Zara was 31 when she found the messages. She wasn't looking. She'd picked up his phone to check the time because hers was charging across the room, and the screen lit up with a thread that had been going for 7 months. She read enough. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time afterward. Abina was asleep in the next room. Zara could hear her breathing through the baby monitor. That small, steady sound that meant something in the world was still simple. She didn't cry that night. She made a plan. She gave Emeka 2 weeks to tell the truth. He didn't. She hired a lawyer, found a basement apartment in Etobicoke, and on a Tuesday morning in November, she packed what was hers and Abena's, put it in a rented minivan, and left. Emeka told people she'd walked out, that she hadn't been happy for years, that she was difficult. This is what certain men do with the truth. They rearrange it until they can live inside it comfortably. The divorce took 8 months. Emeka's lawyer argued about assets. Zara's lawyer was steady and patient. In the end, Zara got enough to survive and nothing more. Emeka kept the car, kept the furniture they'd bought together, kept the story he'd built about who was to blame. What he couldn't keep was Abena, because Abena wanted her mother. The basement apartment had 1 bedroom. Zara slept on a pull-out sofa and gave Abena the bedroom. She taped a paper rainbow to the window and told her daughter it was their adventure house. "When do we go home?" Abena asked once, very quietly. "Baby," Zara said, pulling her close. "This is home. Home is wherever I make you jollof." Abena thought about this for a moment. "Then can you make it tonight?" She made it that night. She made it every week after that. The catering business started because Zara ran out of options, not because she felt ready. She'd lost her waitressing job when the diner closed. EI kept them afloat for a while. She picked up grocery delivery shifts. She babysat for neighbors. She did all of it without complaint and without asking anyone for help she hadn't earned. One evening, she got a call from a woman she barely knew, a Ghanaian woman named Abena Darko, whose daughter was getting engaged and who needed food for 40 people in 3 weeks. Zara said yes before she finished the sentence. She borrowed a large pot from Mrs. Osei. She bought ingredients in portions she'd never bought before. She cooked for 2 days, slept 4 hours, and showed up at that engagement party with everything in foil trays, wrapped so tight they steamed when you opened them. The groom's mother cried, literally wept into her rice. By the end of the night, Zara had 5 business cards in her pocket, handwritten on whatever paper people could find. She had her first 3 bookings confirmed by Sunday morning. She called the business Nkyinkyim Catering, the Adinkra symbol for adaptability. Her mother had a pendant with that symbol that she'd worn every day since Zara's father left when Zara was 9 years old. It felt right. She did everything herself at first. Cooking, packing, delivering, invoicing. She kept a notebook, the same kind her mother used, and she wrote down every order, every client, every dish, every cost to the cent. She couldn't afford to get it wrong. In the second year, she hired her first helper, a Togolese woman named Cynthia, quiet and precise, who could julienne onions faster than anyone Zara had ever seen. In the third year, she moved the operation to a licensed commercial kitchen she rented by the hour, then later by the day. She never told anyone how hard it was. Not because she was ashamed, but because she didn't have time to talk about hard. She just kept going. Abena grew. Zara watched it happen in small, irreversible increments. The school year markers, the shoe sizes, the way she started asking questions that required real answers. Abena was the kind of child who noticed things, who asked, at age 6, why their apartment didn't have a second floor like her friend Maya's house, who asked, at age 7, why her baba only called on her birthday, who asked, at age 8, whether Mama was ever going to stop being tired. Zara sat down on the kitchen floor that time. She'd just come in from a 14-hour delivery day, and Abena sat down beside her, and they ate cereal together on the linoleum, and Zara said, "Not forever, my love. Not forever." She meant it. She just didn't know yet how true it would turn out to be. She met Darius Okonkwo at a food expo at the Inner Care Center on a Saturday in March, 4 years after the divorce. He wasn't what she expected. Which is to say, she wasn't expecting anything. He'd come to her booth. She had a booth now, a proper one with a banner and sample cups and a printed menu. and he'd stood there eating a small cup of her groundnut soup with the focus of someone who was actually tasting it, not just eating. "What did you put in this?" he asked. "It's not something I give away," she said. He smiled. "Fair enough." He asked if she did corporate events. She said yes. He took a card. She thought nothing of it and moved on. He came back an hour later with a second sample cup. "Still trying to figure it out," he said. She didn't know who he was. He was wearing jeans and a simple gray sweater, and he'd come alone, which didn't strike her as unusual. Plenty of small business owners came to these expos alone. He wasn't flashy. He asked good questions. He seemed genuinely interested in the food, which she respected more than most things. He asked if she had a card, and she gave him another one, even though she'd already given him one. He looked at it for a moment. "Nkyinkyim," he said, pronouncing it correctly. "Nkyinkyim," and looked up. "My grandmother had that symbol on everything." Something in Zara's chest went quiet in a way that surprised her. "Mine too," she said. He nodded slowly. Then he thanked her for the soup and left. He called the following week about catering a small team lunch for 12 people at his office in the financial district. She booked it without asking too many questions. She showed up with her assistant Cynthia, and they set up on folding tables in a glass boardroom on the 23rd floor, and Zara served the food herself, the way she always did, because she believed if your name was on the food, you should be the one handing it to people. Darius worked in that building. She realized this only when he appeared in the doorway of the boardroom in a different sweater, a little more formal than before, and said, "You came." "Of course I came," she said. "I was booked." He laughed. It was an easy laugh. He ate with his team and said nothing especially significant, but when everyone was leaving, he stayed to help her stack the trays. She told him he didn't have to. He said he knew. They talked for 40 minutes in that glass room, with the trays between them and the city spread out below. He asked about Nkyinkyim, how long, how she started, what the hardest part was. She told him the truth, most of it, which was something she didn't often do with people she'd just met. "The hardest part," she said, "is that when you're building something real, nobody takes it seriously until the numbers are big enough to prove it. And by the time the numbers are big enough, you've already been doing it for years without anyone noticing." He was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," he said, "I know that feeling." She asked what he did, exactly. He was vague in an honest way. Something about investment, something about import logistics. She didn't push. "You come to the expo alone?" she asked. "I usually do," he said. "I find I pay more attention that way." He called again the following week. Lunch for 20 this time. Then a dinner for 40. Then he called, and it wasn't about a booking. "I'd like to take you to dinner," he said. "Not catering. Just dinner." She almost said no. She was tired and practical, and she'd been alone for 4 years in the way that starts to feel like a choice rather than a circumstance. She almost said no, and then she thought about Abina eating cereal on the kitchen floor and asking when Mama was going to stop being tired. "Okay," she said. They went to a Ghanaian restaurant on Eglinton that she knew and loved, which is how she understood he'd done research. He wore a proper shirt. He'd ironed it. She noticed that. She ordered for first, and he ordered what she recommended, which she also noticed. They talked for 3 hours. She told him about Accra, about her mother's cookbook, about the name Nkyinkyim. He listened the way some men don't know how to, not waiting for his turn, just actually listening. He told her about growing up between Lagos and London, about his mother who'd sold fabric from a table outside their apartment building in Peckham to pay his school fees, about how he still had the first tablecloth she'd ever embroidered, folded in a drawer in his house, because some things are too important to display and too important to put away. On the way out, he held the door. She thanked him. He said, Thank you for coming. I know it wasn't easy. She looked at him. How did you know that? Because nothing good is, he said. 3 months later, she met Abena. He showed up at a Saturday community event, and Nkyinkyim was catering, and Abena was there helping. She always helped when she wasn't in school, packing cups, handing out napkins, taking the whole thing very seriously in the way 9-year-olds do when they feel included. Darius arrived and introduced himself to Abena first, which was the correct order of things, and Abena studied him with her particular intensity, and then said, "You're the one who calls on Wednesday evenings." "I am," he said. "Mama always sounds different after those calls," Abena said. Zara closed her eyes briefly. Darius smiled. "Good different, or bad different?" Abena considered this with all the seriousness of a high court judge. "Good different. Like when the jollof comes out right." They drove Abena home after, and Zara stood on the pavement while Darius waited by his car, a Toyota Camry that needed a wash, and Abena went inside, and Zara said quietly, "She doesn't warm up to people." "I noticed," Darius said. "That means something." "I know," he said. He was not the kind of man who needed to explain himself. That, more than anything else, was what she hadn't been expecting. 6 months after they started seeing each other, Emeka called. He called to say he was getting married. He called to say her name was Simone. Cameroonian, very successful, worked in finance. He called to say the wedding was in May at the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Toronto, and he thought it would be. He used this word deliberately, meaningful if Zara came. Zara sat with the phone against her ear for a moment. "Meaningful for who?" she said. "For closure," Emeka said. "For all of us." She understood exactly what he wanted. He wanted to stand at the altar of a 5-star hotel in front of 200 people, while his ex-wife sat in the back row, confirming the story he'd told everyone. That he had moved up, that he had won, that Zara was the one who'd been left behind. "I'll think about it," she said. She hung up and sat at her kitchen table for a long time. Then she called Darius. "He wants me at his wedding," she said, when he picked up a pause. "What do you want to do? I don't know yet." "Then take your time," he said. "You'll know." She knew by Thursday. She called Emeka back and said she'd be there. She could hear him relax on the phone, the breath, the shift in tone. He'd expected a fight or a refusal, and the acceptance confused him into confidence. "Wonderful," he said. "It means a lot." "I know," she said. She had not told Emeka that 3 weeks before his call, Nkyinkyim had been named one of Toronto Life magazine's top 10 catering companies to watch. She had not told him that she now had a permanent commercial kitchen lease in Scarborough, a staff of 11, and a waiting list for new bookings. She had not told him that Food Network Canada had sent a preliminary email about a possible segment feature. She also had not told him about Darius. More specifically, she had not told him that Darius Okonkwo, whose Toyota Camry needed a wash, had a quiet, careful conversation with her 6 weeks earlier, in which he explained, without making a production of it, that the company he ran was an international investment and import group with operations in 4 countries, and that the reason he drove a Camry and wore unmarked sweaters was because he'd watched his father lose friends to the way money makes people look at you differently, and he'd decided a long time ago that he would find out who people were before they found out who he was. Zara had sat very still during that conversation. "How much?" she'd asked, not because the number mattered, but because she needed to understand the scope of what he was telling her. He told her. She was quiet for a long time. "Is this where you ask me how I feel about you knowing?" he said. "No," she said slowly. "This is where I tell you that I helped you pick those serving trays at the restaurant supply store last month, and I made you carry the heavy ones." He laughed, really laughed, and she thought, this is the right kind of man. The kind who laughs at the right moment. She'd asked only one question that mattered. "Why are you telling me now?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because you introduced me to Abina," he said, "and I'm not in the business of being dishonest with people who do that." The morning of Emeka's wedding was a Saturday in May that arrived cold and bright in the particular way Toronto spring days do. The sun with no intention of warming anything, just illuminating it. Zara took her time getting ready. She wore a dress she'd commissioned from a Ghanaian designer she'd met at an Afrofusion market in Kensington. Structured gold silk, long, with a high collar and an open back. The kind of garment that doesn't apologize for itself. Her hair was done the way her mother used to do it when Zara was young, for occasions that required dignity. Her jewelry was simple and real. She picked up Darius at 10. He was outside when she pulled up, not waiting in the way that signals impatience, but standing calmly with his hands in his pockets in a dark suit that fit him the way expensive things do, like it had been made for this specific body, which it had. He looked at her when she stepped out of the car, and he didn't say anything for a moment, which was better than what he could have said. "You look like someone who doesn't need to be anywhere," he finally said, "but is choosing to be." She smiled. "That's exactly right." They arrived at the Ritz 20 minutes before the ceremony. Zara did not hurry. She walked through the lobby at the pace of a woman who had been to nicer places, which she had, and she took Darius's arm because she wanted to, not for any other reason. She knew the moment Emeka saw her because she heard the specific silence that happens when a room recalibrates. She was not watching him. She didn't need to. She signed the guest book, greeted the usher, and was seated near the middle of the room where she could see and be seen with equal ease. Darius sat beside her. He put his hand over hers on the armrest, which he'd never done in public before, and she let him. The ceremony was beautiful, she'd admit that. Simone was a striking woman in an off-white gown, poised and clearly intelligent. Zara watched her walk down the aisle and thought, "You don't know yet. You think you're starting the best chapter." She hoped, genuinely, that Simone had better luck than she had. Emeka did not look at her during the vows. This told her everything. The reception moved upstairs to the ballroom. There was passed champagne and a jazz quartet and tables dressed in ivory and gold. Zara ate well. She always evaluated other people's catering, professional habit, and she made easy conversation and drank one glass of champagne and did not perform any version of either happiness or sadness. She was simply there. It was a colleague of Emeka's who approached them near the end of the cocktail hour. A man named Theo, pleasant, who recognized Darius. Not in the passing way you recognize a familiar face, in the way you recognize someone whose company has been in the Globe and Mail. "Darius Okonkwo," Theo said, extending his hand. "I didn't know you knew the family." "Through Zara," Darius said simply. Theo glanced at Zara and looked back, recalibrating. "You're Zara Mensah? Nkyinkyim Catering?" "Yes," she said. "My company used you for our Christmas dinner last year," he said. "My CEO still talks about the peanut soup." They talked for a few minutes. Theo mentioned something about a conference Darius was keynoting in the fall, which she hadn't known about, and Darius answered briefly and moved the conversation on with the ease of someone who is accustomed to not making himself the center of things. When Theo drifted away, Zara looked at Darius. "Keynote," she said. "I was going to mention it," he said. "Were you?" "Eventually." A small smile. "How's the lamb?" She looked at her plate. Overcooked. They pulled it too early. She took another bite. "The sauce is saving it. See, this is why I always let you order first." Emeka found her near the end of the evening, by the windows overlooking the lake. It was the moment she'd understood was coming, the reason he'd wanted her here, to stand in front of her and be witnessed as the man who had, in his telling of things, won. He looked good. She would give him that. Zara, he said. His voice had that studied warmth he used when he was performing sincerity. I'm glad you came. You said it was important to you, she said. He glanced at Darius, who was speaking to someone across the room, and then back at her. You look well, he said. I am well. A pause. He was waiting for her to ask about him, to invite the comparison he'd constructed this entire evening to make. She didn't. I heard Nkyinkyim is doing well, he said instead. It is. You should be proud, he said. And there was something in his voice she recognized, the faint surprise of a man discovering that the thing he walked away from grew roots without him. I always believed in you. You know that. Zara looked at him. She thought about the morning she packed her car in November, Abena asleep in her car seat, the radio off, the sound of the city before sunrise. She thought about the basement apartment, the pull-out sofa, the paper rainbow on the window, the cereal on the linoleum. She thought about her mother's handwriting. Emeka, she said gently and without cruelty, congratulations on your marriage. I mean that. She glanced toward Darius, who chose that exact moment to look up and find her across the room, the way people do when they're attuned to each other without trying. I need to get back. She walked away without looking back. Not dramatically, not for effect. Just simply the way you leave a room when there's somewhere better to be. Darius was quiet on the drive home. Not uncomfortable quiet, his kind of quiet, the kind that has room in it. How do you feel? He asked, eventually. She thought about it honestly. Like I went somewhere I used to live and none of my things are there anymore. And that's fine. She glanced at him. It's actually more than fine. He nodded. She pulled up in front of her building, not the Etobicoke basement. She'd moved twice since then. She had a proper apartment in the East End now, 3rd floor. Abena had the big bedroom, and she sat with the engine running for a moment. He wanted me there so I could see what he'd built, she said. But I don't think he understood what he was actually going to see. Darius turned to look at her. He invited the wrong woman, she said. The one he remembered is gone. He reached over and took her hand in that unhurried way of his. Inside, the babysitter reported that Abena had stayed up a little later than agreed and had strong feelings about it. Abena emerged from her bedroom in pajamas to make her case directly and stopped when she saw the gold dress. Mama, she said. I know, Zara said. I'm dazzling. Abena rolled her eyes, age appropriate. But she crossed the room and tucked herself under Zara's arm and stayed there. It was Darius who made the tea. He knew where everything was now. The good cups on the second shelf, the loose leaf in the blue tin, the strainer with the wooden handle. He moved around the kitchen quietly, and Abena told him about a disagreement she'd had at school that week, involving a class project and what she considered an obvious injustice. And he listened and asked 2 good questions and said, "You're not wrong," in the specific tone of an adult who means it. Abena went to bed. Zara sat at the kitchen table with her tea. I've been thinking, Darius said, his own cup in his hands, about the spring conference. They want a featured partner for the networking dinner. 500 people. I thought maybe Nkyinkyim. She looked at him. It's a real booking, he said. I'd pay the full rate. I'm not doing you a favor. You're doing me a favor, she said. I'm doing my guests a favor, he said. There's a difference. She thought about her mother's recipe book, wrapped in plastic at the bottom of a carry-on bag, $1,700 in a money belt, a 1-bedroom in Brampton, a diner on Queen Street, a pull-out sofa, a paper rainbow, cereal on linoleum, a borrowed pot, a food expo, a man who came back for a second sample cup, not because he was still hungry, but because the first one had made him want to understand something. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. Outside, Toronto went about its late-night business, the city unremarkable and reliable in the way she'd come to love it, the way you love a place that didn't promise you anything and gave you everything anyway. Abina called from her room. Mama, is Darius staying for breakfast? Zara looked at him. He raised an eyebrow, a question that was also, gently, an answer. We'll see, Zara called back. That means yes, Abena said. She was not wrong. If this story moved something in you, you know what to do. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Urban African Folktales for more. New stories every week. We'll see you there.